Chapter 30-32. Dmo Xian didn't reply. He held her hands together, his large palms were warm. I remember in that plain the place where you grew up. When you told me about your past, the glow in your eyes. His voice was very gentle, mellow like a fine wine. Bit by bit it intoxicated Yiqing Luo. I know you like that place where you grew up very much. But you are my woman, in the future you will always be with me living in this world. Dmo Xian's hand slowly moved upwards. His slender fingers with thin calluses caressed the skin on Yiqing Luo's face. This is a place of remembrance for you. If you want to go to that plane you can stay here. His gaze slowly swept across the surroundings, that pink-colored environment. Do you still remember in that plane when you told me about your past what you said to me? The hair on her forehead was brushed aside by the man's gentle fingers. Yiqing Luo's slightly red eyes trembled. She looked at Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes, which contained a pool of spring water, the rippling light in his eyes, as though it wanted to swallow her up, so that she couldn't escape. You tried on this colored dress. Dmo Xian looked at Yiqing Luo's bewildered eyes, staring at him in a daze with a face of infatuation. He couldn't help but laugh. He raised his hand, lightly tapped on Yiqing Luo's forehead. That gaze was filled with love and helplessness. Simply too sweet. After Dmo Xian's reminder, Yiqing Luo, who was immersed in beauty, suddenly remembered. Back in the 21st century she indeed pulled Dmo Xian to go shopping, and specially tried on an extremely Lolita pink princess dress. At that time she indeed said this to Dmo Xian. Ah Xian. Actually when I was very young I wanted to be like ordinary girls, to paint the entire room pink. Curtains, tables, chairs, sofa, everything, I want to make everything pink. But because of my identity, my world, other than black there is only white, I don't have the qualifications to like any color. Yiqing Luo pulled back her senses from her memories, and saw Dmo Xian's extremely anxious face. As though as long as she said she didn't like it. He immediately tore down this bedroom and rebuilt it. This man, she was moved and amused at the same time. Because of her words. Dmo Xian really remodeled the room with a pink screen for her. He was putting in so much effort to make her happy, to make her satisfied. What reason did she have to refuse him? In front of Yiqing Luo's eyes, it was as if fireworks had bloomed. There was a warm current in her heart, filling it up bit by bit. Ever since she woke up, she had always felt that it was empty. Yiqing Luo's arms wrapped around Dmo Xian's neck and without any hesitation, she planted her lips on Dmo Xian's lips. I like Ah Xian's surprises and even more. Ah Xian. The moment the girl's soft lips pressed against his, Dmo Xian's pupils contracted. He abruptly tightened his arms and deepened the kiss. Their auras intertwined. Until Dmo Xian noticed that Yiqing Luo's body was not used to such intense intimacy. After fiercely pecking Yiqing Luo's lips a few times, Dmo Xian released her. Yiqing Luo seemed as though she had lost all her energy as she laid limply in his arms. Chapter 30-33. 3,000 strands of hair poured down. The young lady's eyes were like silk, her cheeks flushed red. Because of the kiss, her eyes were half opened, adding a few hints of enchantment and laziness. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped, as his breathing suddenly tightened. His body also turned stiff. How would Yiqing Luo not understand what Dmo Xian's reaction represented? Her cheeks turned even redder. Earlier when Gu Jingyu was about to barge into the room, she retrieved a stamina-replenishing pill from the profound phoenix ring and swallowed it in a timely manner. After nestling in Dmo Xian's arms for so long, finally she had recovered quite a bit of energy. And because of Dmo Xian's kiss, she was once again weak and powerless. And under this situation, she actually still wanted to continue? Yiqing Luo facepalmed. Her man was really poisonous, teaching a pure young lady like her bad. This is your home. Dmo Xian tightened his arms again as the young lady's petite body stuck close to him. Although the strength was strong, but it was controlled very well. It totally didn't cause any uncomfortable feeling to Yiqing Luo. His voice was still that gentle, just a little husky with some kind of suppressed emotions. He panted heavily as he changed the topic, trying his best to pacify his restlessness. No matter if it's the imperial palace or the upper realm. I will let them know the only woman beside me is only you. Only Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her head, her eyes reflected Dmo Xian's face as she revealed a smile. I will also work hard to catch up to your footsteps, and then let everyone know that my Yiqing Luo's man, my husband, is you. Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's eyes lit up slightly. His brows overflowed with a smile. Yiqing Luo's smile became thicker. Her curved eyes were tainted with a trace of craftiness. At this tender moment, Yiqing Luo suddenly moved her arm. The hands which were around Dimo Xian's neck moved to his shoulders. Following that, her waist borrowed strength and exerted force. The man's strong and tall body fell backwards. The soft big bed firmly received the man's body. Bright red flower petals were scattered on the pink bedding, giving off a refreshing fragrance. Dimo Xian's black hair scattered in between the petals, his purple robe also swept up a few ripples. Under the bright red petals, it made the man look even more magnificent and peerless, comparable to a god. Yiqing Luo's petite body covered his chest. She raised herself up and looked down at him. Her slender fingers caressed his face bit by bit. Between his eyebrows, there was a wide smile. The girl bent down, her fine black hair falling on the man's body. Her lips curved into a charming smile and her fingers moved to his thin lips. I like Xian's surprises very much. So, no matter what, I should return the favor. Her voice carried a unique charm and coquettishness. A pair of charming eyes gleamed with a charming and spirited light. Every smile, every frown, every movement was filled with charm. Dimo Xian's pupils contracted fiercely and there seemed to be some kind of emotion in his eyes, as it kept on surging. Just like a beast that was about to break out of its cage. Dimo Xian's change, Yiqing Luo naturally saw it. Her lips curled upwards, her smile became more and more charming, her body also followed closely, slightly lowering a little. Chapter 30-34. Lil Luo. He had to admit that the young lady's action made his eyes light up quickly. Dimo Xian called out Yiqing Luo's name hoarsely as his breathing became heavier. Yiqing Luo, who got the response, her eyes curved even more seductively. She was like a blossoming rose, emitting a fatal charm. Her hand slowly moved from Dimo Xian's lips to his chest. My return gift is. Yiqing Luo's hand, bit by bit, pulled open Dimo Xian's robe, revealing the man's underwear, as well as that large expanse of white and radiant chest. Her hand gently touched his chest. Dimo Xian's eyes instantly darkened and what followed was a surge of turbulent sparks. His body moved slightly. His thick palm was about to grab Yiqing Luo's wrist, to stop her following actions. But, at the next moment, Yiqing Luo's palm pressed on the area of his heart. The young lady's soft touch made Dimo Xian's body stiffen instantly, as his gaze unknowingly trembled. But the young lady had no intention to continue. She curved her long and narrow eyes, those resplendent eyes were like stars embellished. Just like that, smiling, her palm pressed on his heart, not moving away. A burst of profound energy from the young lady's palm was transmitted into Dimo Xian's body. Dimo Xian's red eyes retracted a little. Didn't Chi tell you I'm already fine? He didn't stop Yiqing Luo's action. You've just woken up, don't waste your profound energy. It did. Yiqing Luo's smile was no longer the flirtatious charm which she intentionally teased Dimo Xian, but a rare seriousness. But I need to confirm it personally before I can be assured. Before the goo worm, when Dimo Xian was in the upper realm because he withdrew his clone to protect her, he suffered an internal injury. Later on, under the corrosion of the goo worm, switching back and forth the goo worm's mode, caused a huge damage to his body. Even though Chi confidently told her that Dimo Xian's body had recovered fully and had advanced, she still wanted to confirm it personally. Warm, profound energy slowly spread through Dimo Xian's limbs and bones. After a full cycle, Yiqing Luo then removed her palm and propped herself up. You're smart, you didn't lie to me. Dimo Xian's body indeed didn't have any abnormalities. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. Her hand had just moved away from his chest. The man, who had been lying on the bed obediently, suddenly moved his hand and grabbed her wrist. Is this your gift? Yiqing Luo's expression froze. Her cheeks were tinged with a trace of redness. The large palm on his wrist was like a ball of raging fire. She could clearly feel the heat from the man's body. Yiqing Luo's pink lips, which had been kissed till swollen, pursed her lips slightly as she lowered her eyes and whispered, Personally examining your injury, isn't that a return gift? You want to stop halfway through your flirting? The man's low and husky voice revealed endless magnetism and evilness. Even if I agree, do you think this place will agree? His pointed words made Yiqing Luo's face turn even redder. All right, facing Dimo Xian. She had the courage to flirt with him. But she didn't have the courage to be flirted with. After all, her flirting with him and him flirting with her were totally not on the same level. The minute Diamo flirted with her, she would throw away her helmet and armor in minutes, surrendering and admitting defeat. Chapter 30-35. Yiqing Luo had just finished her words. Her waist was lifted up by a force. Immediately following that, she fell onto the soft big bed. The man's warm body pressed tightly against her. She and Diamo exchanged positions. A very orthodox position. Male on. Female on. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled violently, her little hands curled up slightly as she clutched Diamo collar tightly. When she opened her eyes, she met the man's handsome face. Especially that pair of long and narrow peach blossom eyes, which were like stars embellished with flowing lights and vibrant colors, were absorbing her soul bit by bit. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly accelerated. The man bowed his head, raised his eyebrows and smiled lightly, his thin lips pressed on the skin of her face, slowly moving downwards. Finally it stopped at her lips. A warm and elegant breath wrapped around Yiqing Luo, causing Yiqing Luo's delicate body to tremble from time to time. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but close her eyes. Delicate moans, the breath also became warm. The man's thin lips pressed down. A very gentle, very loving touch. The elegant sandalwood smell lingered between the two. Yiqing Luo's state of mind, gradually, was confused. But just when Yiqing Luo thought Diamo was going to continue the next step, Diamo slowly propped up his body, lying sideways next to her. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes, waited for a long time, and sensed that something was wrong. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Diamo by the side, smiling at her elegantly. In his eyes, there was an obvious teasing smile. Yiqing Luo's face instantly turned red. You did it on purpose. This man actually, after teasing her, he just stood by and watched. Was he deliberately trying to see her embarrassed? Diamo laughed lightly. In the laughter there was endless husky magnetism. His hand, stretched over, embraced Yiqing Luo's delicate body. Yiqing Luo struggled, puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, "You are rejecting my gift. If you don't want it, I won't give it to you." Diamo laughed even more joyfully. His long arms tightly encircled her, covering the young girl's petite body, completely in his chest. The man's slender fingers gently slid over the young girl's back. Her movements were extremely gentle. Why would I reject this reciprocal gift? Diamo leaned close to her ear as he chuckled, "Don't tell me you still can't feel it?" As he spoke he moved a little. How could Yiqing Luo not feel it? Her face was getting redder. She lowered her head, bit her pink lips, and squeezed her head against the man's chest. Diamo sighed softly and tightened his arms even more. "Don't move. If you move again, I might really not have the willpower to take care of your body." A certain softness in Yiqing Luo's heart seemed to have been poked. The resentment in her eyes instantly became as gentle as water. This man, no matter how unbearable it was for him to endure it, he was also thinking about her body. He woke up after sleeping for 3 days and 3 nights. Even if he had the essence chi pill to replenish his energy, he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand Diamo demand. She was very clear about this. She just felt uncomfortable looking at Diamo, but she couldn't bear to do it. So there was that scene of her handing herself over. Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose, smiling contentedly as she hugged Diamo waist with both hands. "Ah Xian, you're so good." Diamo smiled bitterly. "This compliment, I really don't want it." God knows if he could continue to restrain himself. The little woman in his arms didn't understand how attractive she was to him at all. Chapter 30-36. This smile was so enchanting that it could cause the downfall of a nation. But this enchanting smile made Diamo brows twitch as an ominous premonition arose in his heart. As expected, the next moment, Yiqing Luo's alluring face was already close to him. She opened her mouth and bit his neck with her pink and moist lips. She didn't use much strength, and her little tongue touched from time to time. Diamo eyes darkened as his fingers clasped the young lady's slender waist tightly. "Lil Luo, don't play with fire." Yiqing Luo giggled, her smile was devilish and charming. Her petite body in his arms arched here and there, endlessly seeking death. Yiqing Luo stuck close to Diamo. Naturally she could clearly feel his body's reaction. "Lil Luo." Diamo gritted his teeth. "Be careful of self-immolation." That suppressed word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. I'm not playing with fire, I'm just weak and have no energy. No matter how I lie down I can't sit still." Yiqing Luo deliberately used a coquettish tone as she acted coquettishly, rubbing her little face into Dmo Xian's arms. This rubbing decisively made Dmo Xian's body stiffen even more. Even though it was separated by a robe, Yiqing Luo could feel the man's body heat gradually rising. Seeing Dmo Xian's expression had turned extremely ugly and his eyes were filled with fiery red light. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand contentedly and snorted, "Let you see me embarrassed, this is giving you a taste of your own medicine." Saying that, Yiqing Luo pushed Dmo Xian's chest away and was about to get up from the bed. The moment she sat up straight, her wrist was suddenly pulled by the man's strength. She fell into the man's arms once again. What greeted her was an overwhelming masculine aura. The overbearing kiss made Yiqing Luo stunned, until Dmo Xian's wide palm probed her skin. The slightly cold fingertips made Yiqing Luo quiver. Her eyes were misty as she stared at Dmo Xian, making the last struggle. Xian, my body has no energy, no energy." She hadn't finished her words. The man pulled her hand down. Yiqing Luo's hand trembled, but she wasn't able to fight against his strength. The man's husky and magnetic voice carried a bewitching charm as he whispered into her ear, "Lil Luo, there are many other ways that don't consume energy. Extinguish the fire." He deliberately lowered his voice when he said the last two words. It was very seductive. Yiqing Luo instantly wanted to cry but had no tears as her heart was filled with vexation. As expected, she had no chance of winning in flirting with Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian flirted with her at any moment. Yiqing Luo versus Dmo Xian, the nth round. Once again Yiqing Luo fell into a deep sleep in this pink bedroom, which ended. When Yiqing Luo woke up again, it was already noon the next day. She opened her eyes. Dmo Xian was already dressed neatly as he sat by the side, handling the important affairs of the imperial palace. He was well dressed and had an outstanding temperament. He was completely different from the beast from yesterday. Yiqing Luo moved and was just about to lift the quilt on her. However, her hands were so sore that she sucked in a breath of cold air. Especially her 10 fingers, as though they had been cut off and reassembled. Thinking of yesterday, Dmo Xian said to extinguish the fire, without consuming energy. Yiqing Luo was so embarrassed that she couldn't wait to bury herself into the pillow. She swore that she would never flirt with Dmo Xian, that beast, ever again. Yiqing Luo's voice attracted the man's attention. Chapter 30-37. Yiqing Luo turned around with all her might, not willing to bother about him. Dmo Xian bent down and placed one hand on her body through the blanket as he spoke gently, "All right, since you're awake, get up and eat something. Although there are elemental pills to replenish your energy, but you still need to eat." Yiqing Luo twisted her sore hand as she pursed her lips tightly and even harumphed loudly to express her anger. The young lady's rare demeanor made the smile on Dmo Xian's face even more obvious. Only he was able to see such an agile little Luo. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with adoration as he scooped her together with the pink blanket into his arms. "Even if you're angry, you still need to eat something first to fill your stomach before you have the energy to be angry with me, isn't that so?" This tone seemed as though he was coaxing a little pet, making Yiqing Luo's lips twitched. What did he mean by eating until she had the energy to be angry with him? At this moment, according to the usual routine, shouldn't he be hugging her and expressing his mistake warmly and apologetically, promising that he would absolutely not use this kind of method to torment her in the future? This man, why didn't he play his cards according to the routine? As though he could see through Yiqing Luo's thoughts. Dmo Xian's chin, separated by the blanket, pillowed beside her ear as he laughed softly. "I don't want to lie to you because last night was great. In the future there will be more other ways to extinguish the fire, so I'm unable to give you this guarantee." Yiqing Luo. Towards Dmo Xian's words, she really didn't know if she should express gratitude or anger. In the end, Yiqing Luo was half coaxed and half carried by Dmo Xian as she drank a bowl of porridge which was made from precious herbs. After Yiqing Luo had her fill, coupled with Dmo Xian's intentional flattery and gentle words, the anger in Yiqing Luo's heart had more or less subsided. Dmo Xian knew Yiqing Luo's character, so he changed the topic. "During this period of time, stay in the imperial palace to rest and follow me to settle the matter between secluded palace and hell palace. As for the West Continent, you don't need to worry. Yan Xiao Yi Qiao Jin and the others have already brought the Miao tribe's holy maiden to the West Continent. With the Miao tribe's holy maiden around, Long Yunzhan's poison will not be a problem." Mentioning this matter, how could Yiqing Luo still care about what had happened yesterday? Throwing a tantrum? She immediately sat up straight and turned her head, Yi went to the West Continent? What about the Miao people? The battle with the two from the Netherworld Palace. The entire Miao tribe was basically destroyed. When Dmo Xian appeared, he spared the lives of the Miao tribesmen on account of Miao Yi's help. However, the two from the Underworld Palace and the disciples from the Palace of Gloom had killed many of the Miao clansmen. At this time, Miao Yi was still heading towards the West Continent. Wouldn't that deepen the prejudice the Miao people had against Miao Yi? The survivors of the Miao tribe, including the injured tribesmen, number about 1,200 people. Dmo Xian rubbed her head. These 1,200 people, if after this huge battle, know how to unite and survive, it's not impossible to rebuild the Miao tribe. As for the Miao tribe's holy maiden, the Imperial Palace has sent out 2,000 disciples to stay in the Miao tribe, to accompany the Miao clansmen to rebuild the Miao tribe. The condition is in exchange for the Miao tribe's holy maiden, to work for the Imperial Palace for 1 month. The Miao clansmen will not agree to it. Yi Qing Luo, indeed it was impossible not to agree to it. Chapter 30-38. After all, the Imperial Palace's disciples were stationed in the Miao tribe. This not only represented that the Miao tribe had been rebuilt with an additional 2,000 men's strength, but it represented that the Imperial Palace had become the Miao tribe's backing. With the Imperial Palace's protection, the Miao tribe's future development would be much smoother. Moreover, the Miao tribe's holy maiden and the overlord's pampered daughter were brothers. Handing the Miao tribe's holy maiden over to the Imperial Palace, there wouldn't be any accidents. The Miao tribesmen naturally wouldn't be too worried about the Miao tribe's holy maiden. Miao Yi had sold herself to the Imperial Palace for a month for the Miao tribe's future. The Miao tribesmen were extremely grateful, so how could they possibly blame Miao Yi for leaving the Miao tribe at this critical juncture? When Yi Qing Luo heard that, her little body pounced into Dmo Xian's arms as her arms wrapped around his neck and gave him a smack on the cheek. This man was always able to guess all of her worries, and he had arranged everything appropriately. Such a powerful man. To sweep away all the obstacles for herself. If she didn't work hard to raise her profound grade, to chase up to Dmo Xian's footsteps and work hard to walk side by side with him, wouldn't that be letting down Dmo Xian's efforts? Instantly Yi Qing Luo's fighting spirit soared as her little fists clenched tightly. I've decided, after the Nether Palace's matters are settled, we'll go to the East and South continents to get the sacred beast bead and head to the upper realm. Dmo Xian pinched her nose as he gave a low laugh. I thought you had already decided. You asked Xianxia sect's sovereign to automatically send the black tortoise sacred beast bead to me, isn't it to let me make up my mind? Yi Qing Luo shook her little head as the man's finger fell from her nose. That's not it, it's just the right timing. Dmo Xian scooped her petite body into his arms. I understand you, you're not someone who is content with the current situation. Yi Qing Luo didn't struggle any further as she leaned into Dmo Xian's arms, placing her chin on his chest as she raised her head. This battle with the Palace of Darkness, this battle with the Hell Sect, I deeply understood the disparity between myself and them. If it wasn't for my god relic and profound jade heart, I would absolutely not be Nether Palace and Hell Palace's opponent. Indeed, I am not someone who is content with the status quo. I want to protect you, I want to protect my friends just like you want to protect me. I can't hurt myself every time to make myself stronger. So, I want to make myself stronger. Her tone was sonorous and forceful, and it carried a sense of determination. A pair of charming eyes emitted a scorching luster. 4 pairs of eyes met and Dmo Xian's eyes revealed a faint smile. That smile was peerless. His slender fingers were slightly cold as he gently stroked her forehead. He smiled, his tone helpless, but it was full of pampering. So, I have already sent someone to bring a letter to Xiaoyu, asking him to find the sacred beast pearl guarded by the Three Springs sect. Was this man a roundworm in her stomach? As for other matters, don't think too much about them. After you recover, I'll accompany you to the East and South continents. Dmo Xian pinched her cheeks. Don't think of sneaking in alone otherwise. If I catch you back and punish you, you know it. Yi Qing Luo, she inexplicably recalled the scene last night. Her face sunk, expressing that she didn't want to understand. Chapter 30-39. Regarding the secluded palace's matter, the Imperial Palace's disciples and Peach Blossom 3000 have already joined forces to investigate. Dmo Xian could tell what Yi Qing Luo was thinking as he bent down and kissed her lips. I know you can't sit still. These few days I'll bring you to the Underworld Palace to have some fun. By the time we return, the secluded palace's investigation should have reached the Imperial Palace. then we'll consider other matters. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up. Underworld palace? But play is play, you have to listen to me. Dmo Xian poked Yiqing Luo's forehead as he looked at her sparkling eyes, his lips unknowingly curled upwards. No problem. Yiqing Luo nodded her head vigorously. As long as she wasn't locked on the bed, taking various pills to nourish her body, nothing was a problem. Especially when she followed Dmo Xian to the Underworld Palace to have some fun. But Yiqing Luo's excitement and agitation vanished the next day when she followed Dmo Xian to the Underworld Palace. Because she was trapped in the carriage. And it was escorted by Little Nine, the noble sacred beast nine-tailed fox. Not only Little Nine. There were also 4 fairy-like female attendants standing around the carriage. As for her, her range of movement was limited to this carriage. Yiqing Luo. She had no way to resist. She wanted to have some fun at the Underworld Palace. She could only listen to him obediently. Sit in the carriage obediently. Yiqing Luo put on a sour face as she watched a certain overlord casually throw Xiaba and Leng Yan, who were badly mutilated, without a single piece of intact skin. Leng Yan was in so much pain that he sucked in a breath of cold air. His mouth, which had its tongue cut off, kept making sounds. Xiaba laid on the ground as he weakly howled, "Kill us! Kill us!" The ground was quickly dyed red by their blood. These two people's treatment in the Imperial Palace was really tragic. At this moment, 2 young men dressed in black, around 17 to 18 years old, walked over. "You bring them up." Dmo Xian instructed the 2 youngsters as he lifted the curtains of the carriage and stepped into it. The 2 youngsters carried Xiaba and Leng Yan agilely as they walked straight ahead. His speed was extremely fast and he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes stared intently at Dmo Xian as he walked towards her and sat beside her. He even stretched out his hand and hugged her into his embrace. The corners of his eyes twitched uncontrollably. "You intend to let me sit in this carriage for the entire day?" Yiqing Luo elbowed his abdomen. Dmo Xian's large palm wrapped around her wrist. Lowering his head, his thin lips pressed against her fair neck. "I'm taking you to the Underworld Palace to settle the score." "So?" Yiqing Luo's delicate body trembled as she shrank back to avoid the man's mischief. "Although I'm a venerable sovereign, I'm taking you with me. I can't ignore the chief god's law." Dmo Xian didn't stop Yiqing Luo from avoiding him as he tightly rested his chin on her shoulder and spoke in a low and hoarse voice, "Bringing you to the Earth Realm to find trouble with the Underworld Palace. There must be a dignified reason." Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. She immediately understood the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. Every interface had its own rules. For example, the lower realm did not allow people from the upper realm to appear. The upper realm did not allow people from the lower realm who did not have the qualifications to go to the upper realm to appear. Like Yiqing Luo, if she was brought to the Earth realm by Dmo Xian, it would be fine if she wasn't discovered. Once she was discovered, the balance historian had the right to detain her. Chapter 30-40. They were looking for trouble with the Hell Palace. Naturally, it would attract the attention of the people from the upper planes. Yiqing Luo's existence would naturally attract the attention of the people from the upper planes. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Dmo Xian had to have a reasonable reason. A reason which could convince everyone to accept Yiqing Luo, a person from the lower realm, appearing in the upper realm. In fact, to take action against the Hell Palace. Dmo Xian could directly take action. But Dmo Xian had taken into consideration Yiqing Luo's thoughts, so he thought of a way to bring her along to settle the scores personally. After all, when Yiqing Luo had the right to ascend to the upper realm, then she would settle the scores with the people from the Hell Palace. This heat had long passed. The Underworld Palace would also be able to completely disregard this matter. Yiqing Luo had been sleeping in Dmo Xian's arms. But moments later, Dmo Xian called out her name. She opened her eyes and the surroundings were pitch black space. She could faintly see a few wisps of strange aura floating in the air. That pitch black, meandering and spiraling, extended far into the distance, totally unable to see the boundary. Yiqing Luo merely used her senses to scan and understood. That was Xiaba and Leng Yan's evil qi. In other words, they had already reached the Hell Palace. Yiqing Luo was slightly shocked. Was it so easy to come to the upper realm? She didn't feel any discomfort at all. "Sit here properly, leave the rest to me." Dmo Xian's gentle kiss landed on her forehead. When Yiqing Luo raised her eyes, she only saw the back view of the man walking out of the carriage. His purple robe billowed, like the rolling clouds in the black space. silky black hair scattered behind him. That posture, noble and elegant like a god of the world, unattainable. The man walked out of the carriage in big strides. Ale and Ayu, the two guards, were already carrying the two half-dead men standing there waiting for orders. Dmo Xian's expression no longer had any tenderness and sweetness. It was a treacherous, icy cold intent. He stood in between the guards and stopped in his tracks. Following that, his wide sleeves waved slightly. In an instant, an incomparably tyrannical energy surged forward in a direction that seemed to have no end in sight. Bam! That energy seemed to have hit the air. Endless dark force exploded in this pitch-black space. Powerful dark force enveloped the entire space. However, sitting in the carriage, Yiqing Luo didn't have any other feelings. She furrowed her brows. No matter how much Dmo Xian cared about her existence and restrained his power, it was impossible for her not to sense any energy. Unless, Yiqing Luo's gaze immediately fell onto those four female attendants who were brimming with immortal qi. Sure enough, there was a layer of faint purple light in their palms. Barrier. Dmo Xian conjured a barrier to protect the carriage. No matter how intense the battle in the outside world was, she who was protected by the barrier would not be affected in the slightest. Just as Yiqing Luo was in a dilemma about the enchantment. Suddenly, a rough voice rang out in this quiet, pitch-black space. What kind of dog is this? Do you know what this place is? Soon after, a hole seemed to be torn open in the pitch-black space. A huge door appeared out of thin air. A middle-aged man walked out from the door. He was dirty and unkempt. That middle-aged man rubbed his nose as he walked forward with a fiendish look. When his gaze met Dmo Xian. Chapter 3041. Lord Overlord. The middle-aged man's face, which was so dirty that its color could not be seen, had now turned ghastly pale. His violent aura was also restrained. I didn't know that Overlord had arrived. Sorry for not coming out to meet you. Sorry for not coming out to meet you. No matter how arrogant the underworld palace was, no matter how disregarding the secular world. But towards the rumors of Dmo Xian, they had heard of it. There were also many brothers who died in Dmo Xian's hands. It could be said that the underworld palace could defy the heavens, defy the earth and defy the air. But they did not dare to defy Dmo Xian. Even if Dmo Xian just stood there without saying a word, the imposing aura from his body was enough to suppress that middle-aged man, making breathing extremely difficult. This lord is here to send two people to the underworld palace. Dmo Xian's deep and cold voice was emotionless, without any trace of emotion. The middle-aged man only felt his heart tightening as he raised his head apprehensively, looking at Dmo Xian. Who are they? To trouble Overlord to send them personally. Bam. The middle-aged man's voice just fell. 2 lumps of flesh and blood were thrown at his feet. Those 2 lumps were covered in blood. When they were thrown on the ground, they hit the middle-aged man's feet, staining with a large patch of blood. The middle-aged man suppressed the urge to stretch out his feet, to kick these 2 lumps out as he asked in confusion, This is... Save me. At his feet, the person who was nearer suddenly grabbed the middle-aged man's hand as he spoke weakly. The middle-aged man's face sunk. With his originally irritable temperament, how could he tolerate someone grabbing his feet? Previously, when he saw these 2 lumps of bloody things, it was because these 2 lumps were brought by Dmo Xian. Now it was completely a body's conditioned reflex. The middle-aged man immediately kicked the person who was grabbing his feet, and sent him flying. The bloody thing screamed as its body flew out. That bloody lump rolled several rounds on the ground. Finally it lay face up on the ground. Under the messy hair revealed that barely recognizable face. The middle-aged man's eyes widened as he swiftly rushed over, Lord Hal. But when the middle-aged man was about to rush in front of Xiaba, an invisible force blocked the middle-aged man's path. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted. Seeing Xiaba in such a state, he was so angry that his whole body stiffened. He looked in the direction of the power. Clenching his fists tightly, he suppressed the fear in his heart and gritted his teeth. What is the meaning of this, Lord Dizun? Which is to say, you admit that these 2 people are from your hell palace. Dmo Xian's eyes were indifferent as his chilly gaze swept past him. The powerful pressure caused the middle-aged man's heart to be filled with fear. He turned his head with an ugly expression and looked at the other person who was badly mutilated. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't difficult to tell that it was Leng Yan. Leng Yan was the most destructive person in the underworld palace. When the middle-aged man saw that Leng Yan was lying motionless on the ground like a dog, the middle-aged man's face darkened. He stared furiously at Diamo Xian. I wonder how did these two from the underworld palace offend the overlord? Lord Dizun is so ruthless. This lord had personally sent them back, is to have a good talk with the underworld palace, on how your underworld palace had offended this lord. Diamo Xian didn't have the slightest intention of being courteous, as his thin lips curled into a sneer. These words made the middle-aged man's face turn pale, but when he saw the two people lying on the ground, badly mutilated. Chapter 3042. Everyone could see that. Xiaba and Leng Yan were completely crippled. Now they were still hanging by a breath. That must be because Diamo Xian used some special method or elixir, living a life worse than death. That was the heaviest punishment. Overlord, this is the Lord of Hell of our Hell Palace. How dare you injure the Lord of Hell of my underworld palace to such a state? The middle-aged man shouted angrily. Does Overlord want to declare war on the Hell Palace? Diamo Xian raised his eyebrows. But the corner of his eyes fell on the middle-aged man. That made the middle-aged man's back shiver. His fierce words and stern expression immediately disappeared. Diamo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly. He looked evil but revealed a bone-piercing chill. Lord of Hell Palace? The middle-aged man was aghast and shrunk his neck in fear. Since he's the Lord of the Hell Palace then? His actions represent the entire Hell Palace, right? Diamo Xian seemed as though he didn't see his fear as he asked indifferently with an icy smile. His tone was very calm. And there was no ripple in it. But when Diamo Xian spat out the last two words, the middle-aged man only felt that the air around him seemed to solidify. The endless coldness was accompanied by a surging murderous aura. He couldn't breathe at all under the pressure. The middle-aged man was forced to take a few steps back. His body kept trembling at a speed visible to the naked eye. What did Lord Hell Palace do, to annoy Overlord? He injured this sovereign's woman. As Diamo Xian's cold voice sounded. Then, in the air there suddenly surged a strong dark force. Like a stormy sea, it rushed down. The middle-aged man didn't even have a chance to react. Bang! A mouthful of blood was spat out from his mouth. His whole body suddenly flew backward. His body smashed heavily on the door which looked like it was torn apart. Immediately he fell heavily on the ground. Boom boom boom. Another deafening roar rang out. The ground collapsed. Especially where the middle-aged man fell, there was a deep mark. Old lie. All of a sudden, a few furious voices rang out from the Hell sect. Soon after, a few men who were about the same age as the middle-aged man and were also slovenly and unkempt rushed out. One of them helped the middle-aged man lying on the ground up. The rest of them stood in front of the middle-aged man as they stared furiously at Diamo Xian's direction. Overlord, Hell Palace has always been indifferent to worldly affairs, so how could they possibly hurt your woman? Overlord, it's better for you to investigate this thoroughly. Diamo Xian's hands were placed behind his back in a dignified manner. His pair of peach blossom eyes glanced at those few people with a smile that didn't look like a smile. His gaze. However, as soon as it landed on those people, suddenly Diamo Xian's robes fluttered without any wind. Powerful and majestic energy followed closely behind and shrouded him. Bang bang bang. Just like the middle-aged man, those people were sent flying by the attack. On the ground, a few people were scattered all over the place. If he could make a move, he would definitely not make a fuss. Diamo Xian couldn't even be bothered to look them in the eye. You. The middle-aged man was originally seriously injured by Diamo Xian, and on seeing Diamo Xian's barbaric action, he was so infuriated that he spat out another mouthful of blood. You're simply too much. The people from Hell Palace were arrogant and despotic, and cruel to the extreme. They had never suffered such humiliation before. Unexpectedly. The legendary overlord. Chapter 3043. Bully intolerably? Diamo Xian narrowed his shimmering peach blossom eyes as he held in a faint smile and murmured these four words. Those few people from Hell Palace only felt an ominous premonition pervading their hearts. Their bodies instinctively wanted to escape. But, the next moment, another raging surge of profound energy came surging over. Everyone only felt a burst of tearing pain all over their bodies, tearing them apart. The few of them screamed out in pain at the same time. Since you all feel that this lord is bullying intolerably, if this lord doesn't accept these four words, wouldn't it be letting down your judgment of this lord? Diamo Xian's icy cold voice was filled with chilliness. Those few people, how would they dare to open their mouths to refute? Those few people sprawled on the ground and curled up for a while. The middle-aged man, who was addressed as Old Lai, slowly supported himself against the wall behind him and stood up. Dmo Xian, what exactly do you want? Please say it directly. He gritted his teeth as his scarlet eyes widened, suppressing the rage in his heart. Dmo Xian raised his brows disapprovingly. This lord just wants to bully others intolerably. Those few people's faces sunk and all of them had an angry and embarrassed expression. But due to the disparity in strength between themselves and Dmo Xian, they couldn't flare up at all. If it was any other ordinary person, injuring their Hell Palace's people, even if they had to perish together, they would join hands to kill the other party. But the other party was Dmo Xian, the rumored, mysterious and honorable Lord Dmo Xian. Just based on Dmo Xian's effortless strength, he had already pushed the group of them to the ground and even suffered internal injuries. They wanted to join hands to gang up on Dmo Xian. This was an impossible matter. Moreover, it was highly possible that their act of joining hands would infuriate Dmo Xian and he would wash the Hell Palace with blood. There must be some misunderstanding. Lord Dmo Xian, please investigate clearly. Old Lai clenched his teeth, trying his best to make his tone sound more gentle. The few of them didn't forget to sneak a glance at the side, at the carriage that was covered by white muslin. Vaguely they could see a slender figure sitting in the carriage. She must be the Overlord's woman. Old Lai's eyes flashed, and he suddenly knelt down in the direction of the palanquin. Madam? Madam, the Underworld Palace has been cultivating in the Underworld Palace recently, and has not harmed anyone. Speaking until here, Lao Lai paused. Then he turned his gaze to Evil Tyrant and said, the only time I've been able to go out is when Lord Hell and Leng Yen descended to the lower realms to repay the favor they owed me over the years. He raised his head carefully and looked in the direction of the sedan. Lord Hell and Leng Yen are heading down to the lower realm to settle some matters. They definitely won't hurt Madam. In the eyes of the people from the Underworld Palace, she was able to become the Overlord's woman. It was impossible for him to be someone from the lower realm. Xiaba and Leng Yen had gone to the lower realm to take care of some matters. How could he have offended the Overlord's woman? This is definitely a misunderstanding. Your Majesty and Madam, please investigate this. Lao Lai added. As he spoke, he kowtowed a few times. Dong 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 sounds. Yiqing Luo felt pain in her ears. Her slender brows rose slightly. This Underworld Palace really cared about their brotherly ties. Evil Tyrant and Leng Yen had become crippled, thrown right in front of them. They had never thought of giving up on these two crippled people. They were still trying their best to speak up for these two crippled people. She curled her pink lips as her chilly voice floated out from the muslin. Chapter 3044. Old Lai's kowtowing action halted. The others were also stunned. Their gazes swiftly shot towards Xiaba and Leng Yen. Lower realm? The Overlord's woman ran down to the lower realm? And coincidentally met Xiaba and Leng Yen? Towards Xiaba and Leng Yan's character, they had been together for many years, so they naturally understood it. Even in the lower realm, once they didn't follow their wishes, hatred could possibly lead to a huge battle. This time, Xiaba and Leng Yen had offended the Overlord's woman? Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, those Hell Palace's people who thought it was a misunderstanding kept their mouths shut, not daring to open their mouths. Since the Lord of Hell Palace hurt my woman, then it means that your Hell Palace is targeting my woman. Dmo Xian squinted his long peach blossom eyes. Those few didn't dare to reply. Hurt my woman, shouldn't I settle the score with you? Dmo Xian's lips curled upwards as endless cold rays and terrifying aura revolved around him. Hearing Dmo Xian's high-sounding reason, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Based on Dmo Xian's character, he would absolutely wipe out the Hell Palace directly. But in order to take care of her, he used the most complicated method. He only wanted to pave the way for her to personally take revenge. Looking at the man's tall and broad back view, Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as she couldn't hide the happiness and sweetness. However, Yiqing Luo felt happiness and sweetness. But to the few Hell Palace's people, this was simply a death sentence. The few Hell Palace's people slowly gathered together. Their expressions congealed as they occasionally looked towards Xiaba and Leng Yen, who were sprawled on the ground. Their hearts were silently pondering on how to settle this matter. It was just to return a favor to the lower realm. How did they offend the Overlord? The Hell Palace's people who had always dissed the heavens and earth felt helpless. Just at this moment, a voice filled with hatred came nearer. That slut, what kind of madam is she? She's just a slut from the lower realm. As that voice got nearer, in the dark space, a white-robed lady who was filled with fairy-like aura swayed as she walked over. The lady was dressed in white gauze and her jet black hair was fixed with a jade hairpin. As she approached, through the veil Yiqing Luo could see the lady's face. She was exquisite, young and very beautiful. That's right, Mei who should have died in the battle between the Miao tribe and the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo remembered. Under her design, Mei and Yan Zhenfei were squashed into meat patties by the group of semi-finished corpses. Plum actually escaped? Then, where was Yan Zhenfei? People from the mortal world? Lao Lai noticed Mei's choice of words and asked with a frown. Mei's venomous gaze swept across Yiqing Luo's carriage. Yes. She's from the lower realm. How can someone from the lower domain come to the earth domain? Lao Lai seemed to have found a breakthrough. His expression suddenly froze. Your Excellency, this is against the rules. Heh! A light and sweet-sounding sneer came from behind the veil. The girl's lazy voice was filled with endless disdain. Could it be that the Lord of Hell of the Underworld Palace going to the lower realms and attempting to destroy them and devour their space is in line with the rules? Old Lai's face turned red, unable to refute. Yiqing Luo. Mei's venomous voice interrupted the conversation between Old Lai and Yiqing Luo. Step by step, she neared the carriage. Finally, she stood in front of the four maids. Chapter 30-45. Balanced Historian? When these four words came out from Mei's mouth, Hell Palace's people's faces turned black. Once the balanced historian arrived, not only the Overlord's woman couldn't escape, their Hell Palace's people couldn't escape the crime of sneaking into the lower realm to create trouble. Who are you? How dare you come to the Hell Palace to create trouble? Old Lai immediately targeted Mei as he gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, You keep saying that the Overlord's woman is from the lower realm. Since she's from the lower realm, how did you know? How I know is not important. Mei stared at Yiqing Luo coldly. What's important is, she's a lowly person from the lower realm. She's not fit to stand beside the Overlord, nor is she worthy for the Overlord to back her up. The last part of the sentence. Mei's words were squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. She totally didn't conceal her jealousy and resentment. Pah! The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Mei's body was smashed into pieces as she flew backwards and hit the ground. Ale stared at Mei and said coldly, Shut up, how dare you insult the Imperial Palace's future mistress? Half of Mei's face was swollen from the slap, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Imperial Palace. Future mistress. Ha ha ha. Mei let out a low laugh. While murmuring these words, he laughed like a madman. She laughed and laughed. Her laughter became extremely strange. Suddenly Mei raised her head, her deep black eyes fixed on Diamo Xian. Overlord. These are your personal guards, their attitude is your attitude. Future mistress. Was promised to her by you. Am I right? Diamo Xian's eyes were fixed on Diamo Xian. His eyes were so dark that not even the slightest hint of emotion could be seen. It revealed some urgency and craziness. Faintly, she could sense a flash of pain and despair in that pair of eyes. Diamo Xian frowned slightly as his peach blossom eyes turned, but he had no intention to look at Mei. But Yiqing Luo could see a trace of impatience from Diamo Xian's eyes, but he seemed to be apprehensive about something. She could tell. Diamo Xian didn't want to waste time with Mei. But apparently Mei had completely lost her mind. Seeing that Diamo Xian did not reply in time, she then took a few steps towards Diamo Xian's direction. His young and delicate face was twisted with madness. Overlord, she's just a lowly person from the lower world. She'll only be a burden to you if she stays by your side. She's just using your power to achieve her own goals. She doesn't deserve you, she doesn't deserve you. She screamed hysterically. His ferocious and terrifying pupils were bloodshot. She approached Diamo Xian. She raised her hands and tried to hug Diamo Xian. But just as Plum was 3 steps away from Diamo Xian, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Diamo Xian. It was Ayu. The young man, who was dressed in a tight suit, raised his leg and kicked Mei's chest without hesitation. Ayu did not show any mercy in this kick. The kick made Mei wail in pain. She fell to the ground. A crater was formed on the ground. Mei's 5 viscera and 6 bowels were shaken to the point that they were about to split open. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Why? Just because she's young, just because she's beautiful? Mei screamed unwillingly. Her voice was hoarse and she coughed out a big mouthful of blood as she screamed. Chapter 30-46. She doesn't have any ability and only knows how to rely on your power to put on airs in the lowly lower realm. committing all sorts of atrocities. What right does she have to stand by your side? May roared and roared as she suddenly burst into tears. Why? I've waited for you for so long. So long you're not willing to take a look at me? A sudden sobbing tone. It made Yiqing Luo stunned. Through the veil, Yiqing Luo could clearly see that Mei's horribly distorted face which could no longer be restored, with 2 streaks of tears crying pitifully. Yiqing Luo? This was simply too out of place. But it was precisely because of Mei's uncontrollable performance that Yiqing Luo was almost certain of the guess in her heart. Mei's words. It made Dmo Xian's expressionless handsome face gradually turn gloomy. That pair of deep and watery peach blossom eyes flashed past a sharp glint. But Mei apparently didn't notice the change in Dmo Xian's emotions. She covered her own face as she scolded Yiqing Luo viciously and like a white lotus, pitifully crying about her feelings towards Dmo Xian, while belittling Yiqing Luo to be worthless. While she was narrating if she were to stand by Dmo Xian's side, what kind of benefits and help would she bring to him? Dmo Xian's brows creased tighter and tighter. The formless energy fluttered his robe. The powerful aura was incomparably overbearing. Just as Dmo Xian was about to fly into a rage, a clear voice was heard, "Whether I'm worthy of Xian or not, that's between me and Xian, what has it got to do with you?" Mei's voice paused as she swiftly stared at the sedan. "Since you're sincerely seeking guidance on why should I stand by Xian's side then? I shall be merciful and tell you." In the sedan the young lady's voice rang once again. That voice was like a pearl falling onto a plate, extremely pleasing to the ear. Under the white veil, Mei seemed to see a pair of torch-like eyes, deadly, staring at her without blinking. The moment she was stared at by that gaze, Mei always felt an indescribable chill seeping into her skin, spreading from the bottom of her heart. Her body was trembling uncontrollably. "Because Xian loves me." Yiqing Luo said it word by word, extremely slow and clear. Mei's eyes widened, and her pupils contracted little by little. A ruthless killing intent surged in his eyes. She staggered back a few steps and shook her head hysterically. "He doesn't love you. He definitely doesn't love you. He's just playing with you, just playing with you. Of course it's not just because Xian loves me. It's also because I'm young, because I'm beautiful. Because I'm stronger than you." Yiqing Luo totally disregarded Plum's crazy howls. He was still smiling as he continued to attack Mei. "As for the benefits and help you can bring to Xian, I don't think it's important." Yiqing Luo lazily leaned against the back of the soft chair as her voice revealed a languid tone. "Based on Xian's ability, he totally doesn't need your help." Mei's ferocious face twisted crazily again. Her scream turned into a roar. He looked extremely terrifying and irritable. "What? I'll kill you. Kill you." Mei howled crazily, her stomach full of grievances made her completely lose control as she pounced towards the sedan. The 4 maids immediately got into a defensive posture. Just as Mei pounced over in rage, the smile in the sedan grew even more intense. Chapter 3047. By Mei. These 2 words were like thunder, exploding in Mei's mind. Her body, which was pouncing towards Yiqing Luo, suddenly froze on the spot. Mei raised her head abruptly, her bloodshot eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. What did you call me?" "By Mei Fu." When she said these 3 words, she purposely dragged out the word fu, and immediately stopped and chuckled. "I'm sorry, I've forgotten that you're no longer the teacher of the Heavenly Academy's class of God." Mei seemed to have been poked at the most unbearable wound. She immediately pointed at Yiqing Luo angrily. "What master, what Heavenly Academy, little slut, don't try to change the topic." "Isn't that so?" Yiqing Luo tilted her head and gave a sarcastic smile. "Initially I wasn't too sure about my own guess. But other than by Mei Yu, this old woman, who else would care about their own age like Xian?" Just now, Yiqing Luo had screamed hysterically, saying that Yiqing Luo had used her youth and beauty to seduce Dmo Xian. This made Yiqing Luo, who originally suspected that Mei was by Mei, even more certain of her guess. Only Bai Mei would care about her age in front of Dmo Xian. Because previously, in order to diss Bai Mei, she deliberately used Bai Mei's age to make Bai Mei vomit blood. When she saw Mei, Yiqing Luo had always felt that Mei was very strange. Especially that face, which totally didn't match her temperament. It was especially out of place. Speaking of which, Bai Mei really worked hard for Dmo Xian. She didn't hesitate to abandon her charming face and put on a young and beautiful face. Did she really think that Dmo Xian was that kind of shallow man? Mei. That was Bai Mei, gloomily looked at Yiqing Luo. Little slut, did you think that by exposing my identity the Overlord will punish me because of this? Unfortunately you are wrong. As if she had caught the only pride, Bai Mei's eyes flashed a trace of excitement. The Overlord will only forgive me because I am Bai Mei. She was indeed Bai Mei. Since Yiqing Luo saw through her, she might as well not refute. Anyway, even if Yiqing Luo did not expose her, after the balance historian captured Yiqing Luo away, she would also take the initiative to confess her identity to Dmo Xian. She hated her identity as Bai Mei. She hated that body that was in her 30s. However, in order to use the name Bai Mei in exchange for his life, he had no choice. She had to confess. However, now it was Yiqing Luo who was the first to reveal it. Bai Mei stared at Yiqing Luo as her eyes shone with a cunning chill. In the sedan, the young girl listened to Bai Mei's words. Her long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. This was not the first time that Bai Mei had relied on her status to firmly believe that Dmo Xian would not do anything to her. What did Bai Mei rely on? Was this the so-called sister that she had mentioned? That sister, between her and Dmo Xian, although she believed that it was not a particularly ambiguous relationship between a man and a woman. But, what kind of unknown past did her man have with another person of the opposite sex? Regardless of whether it was ambiguous or not, more or less he would feel uncomfortable in his heart. Especially when Bai Mei had been using her own sister to continuously provoke Dmo Xian's bottom line. This Bai Mei was really shameless to the extreme. Yiqing Luo was thinking about how to dispel Bai Mei's idea of using her own sister to make her presence known. Chapter 3048. Bai Mei was feeling complacent because Yiqing Luo didn't retaliate. Suddenly he felt a surge of dense profound energy biting cold, surging down violently. At this moment, how could the heavily injured Bai Mei possibly dodge this horrifying power? Her entire body was flipped over. In the air there were bursts of exploding sounds. Bai Mei felt as if her internal organs, limbs and bones were being torn apart by something. It was so painful that she sprawled on the ground, screaming miserably. This scene made Yiqing Luo raise her brows as she sat up straight. Her gaze, through the veil, shot straight to that noble and elegant figure. It was Xian. Dmo Xian's face was cold, without any extra emotions. His icy cold face revealed a trace of sharpness. A pair of deep black peach blossom eyes as dark as the sea. Bai Mei, do you really think that I don't dare to kill you? His icy cold voice was filled with chilliness. Bai Mei laid on the ground in a sorry state, her petite body twitching from time to time. You kill me, sister will not let you off. Whoever hurts little Luo, I will not let any of them off even if it's her, it's the same. Dmo Xian was expressionless. This sentence. It made Bai Mei want to rely on her sister's words, to be stuck in her throat. Her eyes suddenly turned red. She was clear. Whatever Dmo Xian said, he would put it into action. The meaning in Dmo Xian's words was already very clear. As long as it was related to Yiqing Luo. Even if her sister came personally, he would absolutely not be soft-hearted and would not tolerate it. Not knowing if it was the heartache or the pain in her body, it made her hands curl up. Tears rolled down from her eyes. Dmo Xian flicked his sleeves, too lazy to take another look at Bai Mei. His peripheral vision shot a glance towards Ayu's direction. Ayu understood, flew up, and directly carried Bai Mei on her shoulder. Bai Mei was still grieving when suddenly being carried by Ayu. Instantly that twisted face became even more twisted from the pain. Her voice was hoarse and she struggled hard. Your Majesty, are you really going to hurt the relationship between you and my sister for a lowly person from the mortal world? Big sister has always doted on me the most. Big sister will never forgive you for treating me like this. I will never forgive you. Her screams, her struggles. She did not receive any attention from Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's peripheral vision had not even fallen onto her. Instead, he looked straight ahead at the people from the underworld palace who were supporting each other as they crawled up from the ground. This exalted one wishes to perform a blood sacrifice for the underworld palace to support this exalted one's woman. Everyone from the underworld palace should have no objections, right? Although he meant it as a question. But his tone was clearly a statement. In other words, he wasn't asking for the opinions of the people from the underworld palace. It was just a symbolic notice. The expressions of the people from the underworld palace changed dramatically. All of them widened their eyes and moved their mouths, but they were unable to utter a single word to refute Zhang Xian. They had experienced Di Zun's brutality. If he retorted, Who knows, another round of vicious beatings. The people of the underworld palace were feeling apprehensive. On the other side, Bai Mei struggling on Ayu's back gradually stopped. Suddenly she started crying and laughing crazily, looking at Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's attitude had already told her very clearly. Don't try to use her sister's name to make him compromise. To him, the most important was only Yiqing Luo. Anyone else, even if it was his sister. Chapter 3049. Bai Mei, whose heart was like dead ashes, laughed and cried as she collapsed on Ayu's shoulder. Other than laughing and crying crazily, she had quietened down. Dmo Xian's gaze had never looked at Bai Mei. He slowly narrowed his eyes as he looked at the row of burly men in front of him. Then he strode forward and walked into the underworld palace's entrance. Old Lai and the rest looked at each other. All of them wanted to stop him. But their feet had just moved. Dmo Xian's entire body carried a berserk force as he was sent flying. Rumble. A huge cracking sound was heard, splashing mud and stones all over the ground. The pitch-black space was filled with terrifying and shocking energy. It was like a level 12 tornado sweeping up everything in its surroundings. The Hell Palace's main door was directly blasted open. Dmo Xian's steps were steady as he stepped into the Hell Palace bit by bit. Behind him, Ale carried Xiaba on one hand and Ling Yan on the other. Ayu was carrying Bai Mei. Following which, they walked towards the Hell Palace. Little Nine raised his neck, shaking the snow-white fur on his body. Only then did he take graceful steps, pulling the carriage and following behind. The four maids also followed closely behind. Just like that, the group of people swaggered into the underworld palace. The Hell Palace was indeed as its name suggested. Rather than saying it was a mansion, it was more like an underground cave. The entire underground cave was extremely spacious. It looked eerie and extremely terrifying. After stepping into the Hell Palace, the surroundings were no longer that pitch-black space like before. On both sides of the rock wall, there were 2 candlesticks every 10 over steps. On the candlesticks, there were candles inserted diagonally. The candles were bright, elongating everyone's shadows. Of course, if these candles were ordinary candles, Yiqing Luo would absolutely not think that this was terrifying. What made her curious was, the candles on both sides were burning with a kind of almost green light. The entire Hell Palace was filled with a kind of faint green feeling. This green light was mixed with an extremely damp and cold aura. The sizzling sound of burning could be heard. Yiqing Luo seemed to have smelled a strange smell in the air. It made her extremely disgusted. What the hell? What kind of candle is this? Why is the color so strange? And it gave people such a strange feeling? Especially when his line of sight touched the candlelight. There was always a very uneasy feeling in her heart. In this uneasiness, she subconsciously stretched out her hand and touched the cherry blossom pattern on her wrist. The skin he touched was smooth and shiny. The bright red cherry blossoms on her fair wrist were extremely obvious. The azure dew bracelet was still on her wrist. She thought that back then she had risked her life to stall Xiaba and forcefully break the blood contract with the azure dew bracelet. But when she woke up, the veined pattern of the azure dew bracelet was still on her wrist and hadn't disappeared. Yiqing Luo's eyes stared fixedly at the azure dew bracelet for a long time. Although the azure dew bracelet was still there. But Old Man Song was no longer there. Not only Old Man Song. She couldn't sense anything related to the azure dew bracelet. If it weren't for the fact that the azure dew bracelet's vein patterns were still there, she really thought the azure dew bracelet had already dissolved its blood contract with her, and no one knew where it had gone. If Old Man Song was still here, he would definitely tell her what these candles were. But she couldn't contact Old Man Song. Was Old Man Song angry at her? Angry at her stubbornness. Chapter 3050. Lil Luo, what's the matter? A man's low hoarse voice suddenly rang beside her ear. Yiqing Luo raised her head abruptly. A figure brushed past her eyes. Her petite body suddenly felt light as she was brought into a broad embrace. The man's arm encircled her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder. A warm breath lightly sprayed on the skin of her neck. Why are you suddenly feeling down? Unhappy? Yiqing Luo's body leaned back slightly as she changed into a more comfortable position in the man's embrace. Her slender little hand hooked one of his fingers as she played with it, thinking of Old Man Song. She didn't hide it as she lowered her eyelids and said softly, "My willfulness hurt his heart. You should be angry at me. Don't let your imagination run wild." Dmo Xian turned his head and kissed her cheek. Old man Tsang dotes on you so much, how would he bear to be angry at you? The azure dew bracelet's response has disappeared. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips as she raised her right hand. The circle of bright red cherry blossom petals was the same as usual, without any change in them. But only Yi Qing Luo could sense the change within. Dmo Xian's slender fingers clasped her wrist. His slightly calloused fingertips gently caressed the patches of red lines. In order to stop the Hell Palace's people, you made a move on the Sacred Maiden Institute. That's indeed reckless. Dmo Xian opened his mouth and gently bit her neck. His low hoarse voice had a trace of displeasure. You forcefully wanted to dissolve the Azure Dew Bracelet's blood contract. This not only affected the Azure Dew Bracelet, your spiritual body will also be affected. Adding on to that, you forcefully activated the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade and the two overlapped. It has far exceeded the burden your body can bear. It's already a miracle that you're still alive now. As for the Azure Dew Bracelet, after being tormented by you, it definitely needs to undergo self-repair. Naturally, you're unable to sense the Azure Dew Bracelet's energy. After explaining, Dmo Xian raised his hand and knocked Yi Qing Luo's head hard. After the Azure Dew Bracelet is repaired, Old Man Tsang will naturally look for you. Yi Qing Luo rubbed her little head into his embrace. Her little act of acting cute did not make Dmo Xian reduce the strength in his hands. He knocked on her head again. Do you still dare to be willful in the future? I don't dare. Yi Qing Luo purposely cried out in pain as she shrank her little head. Remember what you said. This time round, Dmo Xian's hand encircled her slender waist again as he leaned close to her ear. If there's a next time, I'll continue for the third time. Yi Qing Luo, did he mean to give him a taste of his own medicine? She worried him. Was he going to let her worry for once? Why don't I feel the same way? Was there a need to be so overbearing? There was only a white veil hanging around the sedan. Although they couldn't see what was happening inside clearly from the outside. However, he could vaguely see the figure under the veil. The shadows of the two embracing each other and the occasional chuckle. The eyes of Bai Mei, who was lying quietly on Ayu's back like a corpse, like stagnant water, trembled slightly. Jealousy spread from the bottom of her eyes. Dmo Xian and his entourage swaggered into the Hell Palace. Old Lai and the rest naturally followed behind them with small steps. They didn't dare to get too close. They were also afraid of losing them. The entourage walked like this for about the time it took to burn a stick of incense. Chapter 30:51. On the way they passed by at least 20 over candles. After seeing those green candlelight, the uneasy feeling in Yi Qing Luo's heart grew stronger. The man's large palm gently pressed on her shoulder as he whispered, I'm here. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes and met the man's deep and warm eyes. Her charming eyes slightly curved, and she could feel that something was wrong with the candlelight. How could Dmo Xian not feel it? Dmo Xian said it was fine. Then it must be fine. I will let you settle the debt with them personally. Dmo Xian whispered into her ear in a low and hoarse voice. Yi Qing Luo was tickled and her petite body trembled as she rubbed her head against his shoulder. Bai Mei has informed the balance historian, will it cause you trouble? Your business has never been troublesome. Dmo Xian curled up a strand of her hair and twirled it around his fingertip as he gave a low laugh. As for, currently, other than you, I have not met anyone who dares to find trouble with me. Iske? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as she stared at him. The first sentence said I'm not your trouble and the next sentence became me finding trouble with you, men. As she said that, she shook her head and sighed. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with pampering as he pressed her little head with both hands to stop her from shaking her head. Just as he was about to kiss her, suddenly there was a commotion in front. Immediately in front, more than 10 figures were rushing over. Those 10 over people carried a horrifying aura. Along with their approaching speed, the entire Hell Palace was swept up by a strong hurricane. Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed as her little hand pressed against Dmo Xian's chest as she sat up straight and looked over. She saw a bunch of dirty and sloppy-looking people rushing over from the corner ahead. Their speed was extremely fast and without the slightest hesitation. Their aura was domineering and ferocious. At the same time, Old Lai and the rest who had been following behind, not daring to get close, seemed to have been reborn as they joined the 10 over people in a pincer attack as they swarmed over. In a split second the earth shook. The air in the entire Hell Palace seemed to be swept up by mud and stones. The surging strength chi surged violently, surging like a dragon, producing a sharp explosive sound. This sudden attack. Ayu and Ale could only choose to quickly put down the things they were carrying and respond quickly. The underworld palace had at least 20 people in total. Moreover, when they started fighting, they were so crazy that it seemed like they would die with you at any moment. No matter how high Ayu and Ale's profound rank were. In the face of such a large number of people and their ferocious fighting style, both of them were struggling. The maids around the carriage stood where they were, not showing any signs of interfering. Lao Lai and the others wanted to take the opportunity to attack the sedan. He had yet to get close. He was thrown out by the 4 maids at the same time. The few of them roughly understood. These 4 female attendants were only protecting Yi Qingluo alone. As long as Yi Qingluo was in danger, then they would take action. Looking at the sudden outbreak of battle in front of him, Diamo Xian's hand, which was locked on Yi Qingluo's waist, tightened slightly as a low laugh escaped from his mouth. Interesting. Saying that, he had already let go of Yi Qingluo and stood up. Wait for me in the carriage. The corners of his lips curled up into a magnificent smile. Diamo Xian's footsteps had just stepped out of the carriage. The gauze curtain, which was originally dancing wildly due to the energy, actually drooped down at this moment, as though there was no wind blowing in the surroundings. Chapter 3052. It was an enchantment. Once again it protected her in the carriage. Yi Qingluo looked at the man's tall back as she squinted her eyes. It looked like Diamo Xian intended to use the Hell Palace to test his ability after his advancement. If not for the protection of this enchantment, facing the surrounding wave after wave, surging waves, she absolutely could not take it. Not knowing, how long could these people from Hell Palace last? Yi Qingluo leaned lazily against the back of the chair as she paid close attention to Diamo Xian's actions. Old Lai and the others were heavily injured, and after Diamo Xian and the others barged in, they could only use their special communication method to inform the Hell Palace's bunch of lunatics about this matter. Old Lai's original intention was to let them take the opportunity to escape, but this bunch of lunatics had always been arrogant and haughty. Now they had come knocking on their doors. How would they be able to tolerate this? Immediately 10 over of them charged over. Old Lai saw that he couldn't stop them, so he could only make use of their Hell Palace's current condition to speedily recover his injuries and coordinate with those 10 over men's attack. A sudden pincer attack. If they were lucky, they might really be able to subdue Diamo Xian. But they had belittled Diamo Xian and thought too highly of themselves. The moment Diamo Xian walked out of the carriage, the surging profound energy in the surroundings started to settle down bit by bit. Following his slow steps, his purple long robe drew out rolling purple clouds, shimmering with splendor. The frozen air was also shattered along with it, like bursts of waves spreading out in circles. The majestic aura turned into several huge dragon shapes as it surged in the surroundings, winding and spiraling. Hell Palace's people and Ayu and Ale's ferocious attacks. Under this valiant profound energy's oppression, they were forced to the point where they were unable to move. Hell Palace's people's expressions were malevolent and steely green. There were quite a number of people whose eyes had unknowingly revealed an astonished look. Diamo Xian slowly raised his hand. That slender jade-like fingers had distinct joints. Under the dim green candlelight, on the contrary, it made that finger look like a work of art, as though it was bewitching people to take a bite. But in the eyes of Hell Palace's people, no matter how beautiful or how tempting, those hands came from the depths of hell, hands that claimed their lives. Lao Lai's cold eyes darkened. His big palms suddenly pressed down on the strange candles on both sides. It was as if he couldn't feel any pain in his palm at all. He pressed it directly on the dark green candle flame. Immediately Old Lai clenched his fist. An evil and sinister aura surged from his body. Take Lord Hell and Ling Yan away. I'll clean up the mess. At the instance when the evil chi surged, Old Lai's fingers suddenly clenched tightly as he fiercely threw a punch towards Diamo Xian's direction. Diamo Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes. The smile at the corner of his mouth gradually turned cold. He raised his hand and slowly but smoothly drew a mark. Dark force condensed in the air. Following the movement of his fingers, lingering. All of a sudden, a glaring purple ray shot out from Diamo Xian's palm. The tyrannical profound energy did not hold back in the slightest as it directly attacked. Carrying the dark force, it was like a stormy sea, surging unceasingly. Boom! The entire underground cave was plunged into an earthquake. The surrounding dark green candlelight flickered and flickered incessantly. This made the Hell Palace even more eerie and strange. Dong. Chapter 3053. Boom. Dark rays bloomed from his body. Smoke and dust billowed in the air billowed. Everyone could vaguely see, Old Lai was lying in a huge pit. His chest was pierced by the profound qi. Fresh blood oozed out from the hole. Old Lai was in so much pain that his whole face was twitching. What made the people from Hell Palace feel a chill was, Lao Lai, who had a hole poked through his body, was actually still alive. Did the Overlord not let him die? The people of the Underworld Palace considered themselves to be the most abnormal among the lunatics. Seeing Dmo Xian, they finally understood deeply. There would always be someone stronger than him. The Overlord had never thought of taking their lives. He wanted them to live a life worse than death, struggling on the edge of fear and death. Bit by bit, their gazes shifted to Evil Tyrant, Leng Yen and Old Lai. Suddenly they broke out in cold sweat. All their attention was focused on Dmo Xian and the people from Hell Palace. No one noticed. A slender figure swayed as she walked in the direction of the carriage. She swayed unsteadily, her steps unsteady as she moved with great difficulty. The carriage was moving without any wind. The white muslin of the four maids danced with the wind. Suddenly, the girl in the sedan gently tapped her fingers. That invisible gust of wind instantly calmed down. The slender figure swayed as she finally approached the carriage. She held her breath and controlled her breathing so that the maidservants guarding the sedan wouldn't notice her. The maid's gaze was fixed on Dmo Xian. It seemed that he didn't notice her approaching. The slender figure widened her eyes, which were filled with malevolence, and stared at the young girl in the sedan with a twisted and hideous expression. Suddenly the figure shook violently. He turned into an afterimage and directly pounced toward the carriage. The white muslin dress dispersed in the air like smoke. Ah! But that figure rapidly charged toward the palanquin. He was only one step away from the palanquin. The four maids who were staring at Dmo Xian suddenly raised their right hands at the same time. A purple light floated. The majestic and overbearing profound energy shrouded the entire carriage. The slender figure collided with the purple energy. The heart-wrenching pain instantly eroded the slender figure's senses. The veil hanging from the palanquin fluttered slowly. Vaguely, the young girl's exquisite and beautiful face was revealed. The corner of the young girl's mouth curled into a mocking sneer. Her beautiful face was also filled with ridicule. She leaned against the soft chair lazily. 3,000 strands of black hair scattered behind her. Then the young girl's eyes curved and her pink lips curled up. She stared at the slender figure in front of her and slowly said, "Bai Mei, don't act like a clown. Don't overestimate yourself." Bai Mei was sent flying by the barrier and smashed into the ground with a thud. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's sarcastic words, Bai Mei clenched her teeth tightly as she suddenly raised her head and stared at Yi Qing Luo resentfully. That beautiful face that could topple a city. That mocking smile. That disdainful attitude toward her. Bai Mei's facial features became even more twisted. Anyway, she was going to die today. She had no intention to go back alive. To be able to bring Yi Qing Luo, this slut, to hell before she died. That was enough. Bai Mei clenched her fists tightly as she slammed the ground and forced herself to climb up from the ground. The madness and jealousy in her eyes seemed to be nourished as it kept growing. Chapter 3054. Through the Veil. Yi Qing Luo could clearly see Bai Mei's changes. Especially when she saw the black qi overflowing from Bai Mei's eyes. Her slender brows creased slightly. As expected. This Bai Mei's body had already been implanted with the evil qi which belonged to the Palace of Darkness. This gush of evil qi. It was totally similar to the evil qi which was used to control Miao Rongrong. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she sized up Bai Mei seriously. Bai Mei could change into a young and beautiful face. It should be the credit of the Palace of Darkness. And the reason why Bai Mei followed Yan Zhenfei and Fox Sacred Law. It was probably a deal to change her face. Bai Mei was used by the Palace of Darkness. Based on the Palace of Darkness's temperament. The Palace of Darkness would absolutely not change Bai Mei's face properly. That face which Bai Mei had changed. It must have been tampered with. Today, seeing Bai Mei's look, everything was as Yi Qing Luo had predicted. Bai Mei's face was the source of that sinister aura. The Palace of Darkness wanted to make use of Bai Mei. To achieve what motive? Yi Qing Luo had just expressed this question. Very quickly Bai Mei gave her the answer. Endless black qi overflowed from Bai Mei's eyes continuously. She was like a puppet which was being controlled by someone, swaying but not slowing down as she charged madly towards Yi Qing Luo. When Bai Mei's body collided against the floating purple light once again, She actually pressed her face hard onto the enchantment which was formed by the faint purple light. The purple light moved, like bolts of lightning, speedily shooting towards Bai Mei's face, rumbling downwards. But balls of black qi from the surroundings of Bai Mei's face started to seep out bit by bit. That strange black qi was like a magnet, firmly sucking on the enchantment. The entire enchantment was filled with purple electric currents, and it was twined with circles and circles of black qi. Apparently, Bai Mei wanted to forcefully break Dmo Xian's enchantment. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes as she looked at the black qi which was still seeping out, persistently twining around the enchantment. Bai Mei's face was already twisted in agony. However, the black gas continued to spread. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she narrowed her charming eyes, reflecting a cold ray of light. In any case, you were once a master of the Heavenly Academy, but now you have fallen into the devil's path. Tiske. As she spoke, she shook her head in disdain. I heard that the teachers of the class of God are all from the upper realm. But now they have abandoned themselves and are entangled with the lower realm, the Dark Palace. I really don't know if your mysterious sister will regret not strangling you when you were born. Bah. The face that was stuck to the barrier suddenly moved a few inches away from the barrier. Bai Mei raised her eyes and stared at Yiqing Luo with a venomous gaze. What right do you have to mention my sister? You don't deserve to mention her. Bai Mei was provoked. The moment his face left the barrier, the black gas that was originally twisting and moving, rising and spreading. With an extremely fast speed he quickly stopped breathing. Bai Mei also came to a sudden realization. She quickly pressed her face against the barrier again. But Yiqing Luo didn't give her this chance. Yiqing Luo intentionally used words to provoke Bai Mei, to distract her. She then took the opportunity to stop Bai Mei from using the evil qi to engulf the enchantment. Just as Bai Mei's face was about to be pressed down, Yiqing Luo's fingers moved. The glower flame fan flew out from her fingertips. It turned into a whirling flame. Chapter 30:55. She cried out in pain as she swiftly retreated to avoid the glower flame fan. But the glower flame fan had already drawn a bright red wound on her cheek. Endless black qi seeped out along with the blood. When Bai Mei was a few steps away from the enchantment, Yiqing Luo's fingers moved. That raging flame which was swirling in midair immediately returned to Yiqing Luo's hands. Bai Mei covered her face as her scarlet poisonous eyes stared at Yiqing Luo vigilantly. But no matter how vigilant Bai Mei was, compared to Yiqing Luo's speed, she was far behind. Bai Mei didn't see clearly what Yiqing Luo had done. She only felt that her body seemed to be bound by something. Her four limbs were unable to move. And that thing which bound her was tightly squeezing her skin, making her feel a piercing pain. Ugh! It was another thing which seemed to embed into her bone marrow. Bai Mei gave a dull moan. She was in so much pain that her eyes were blurry as she stared at Yiqing Luo. But she saw Yiqing Luo holding the glower flame fan as her fingers flicked from time to time. Every time Yiqing Luo's fingers moved slightly, Bai Mei could feel that the thing which bound her four limbs had turned into a sharp blade, cutting her bones. Suddenly, a dazzling light pierced her eyes. Bai Mei's eyes widened as she squinted her eyes. Following that dazzling light, her vision slowly shifted. This time she discovered, the thing which bound her was not something else, but strands of silver threads that were as thin as black hair. There were at least 5 to 6 strands of silvery strands. They were shot out from the glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands. No matter what. You were once a master of the Heavenly Academy as a student of the Academy? Naturally I can't leave you in the lurch. I'll help you take down this face. Yiqing Luo's clear voice was mixed with ridicule and laughter. Her fingers swept forward. Bai Mei clearly heard a swoosh sound in the air. Following that, she felt a cold touch on her face. It was silvery strands. Bai Mei's face turned pale instantly. Blood seeped out and stained the silvery strands on her face. How dare you? How dare you touch my face? Bai Mei's scarlet eyes were filled with resentment. Yiqing Luo had no doubt that at this moment, the silver threads of the glower flame fan had not restrained Bai Mei. Bai Mei would definitely pounce on her and fight her hand to hand. Bai Mei had sacrificed too much for her young and beautiful face. She wanted to be young and beautiful. She wanted to obtain Dmo Xian's love because of this. How could she allow anyone to touch her face? Facing Bai Mei's hysterical madness, Yiqing Luo remained calm and elegant as the corners of her lips twitched into a smile. Why wouldn't I dare? As for Bai Mei, she did not have the slightest bit of sympathy. For a face. He was willing to abandon his dignity as someone from the upper world and join the Dark Ghost Palace, mixing with the motley crew of the Dark Ghost Palace. He had repeatedly caused trouble for her. Hurt her brother. Most importantly, she was really annoying. There was another woman who wanted her man. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with an icy chill. Her fingers moved, and the silver thread that was as sharp as a blade started to slowly cut open Bai Mei's face. Swoosh! Suddenly, a piece of black object flew towards Yiqing Luo's hands. That momentum was extremely ferocious. It carried a strong and austere aura. Like a sudden clap of thunder, like a surging wave. Chapter 3056. Who is it? The four maids who were standing still on the four sides of the carriage suddenly rushed in front of Yiqing Luo. These four maids had noticed Bai Mei's actions right from the start. They didn't make a move because of Yiqing Luo's obstruction. They were clear that one Bai Mei was not Yiqing Luo's opponent. But, this sudden burst of energy. It aroused their vigilance. One of the maids swiftly waved her palm to meet that irresistible force and split it apart. Ka! A slight sound was heard. That thing was split apart by the maid. It turned into a piece of drifting as though it didn't have any lethality and slowly floated downwards. Yiqing Luo fixed her eyes on it. That was actually a piece of leaf. That's right, an ordinary piece of leaf which was split into two. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. She had indeed heard that if the profound energy was strong enough, even water could be condensed into a sharp blade, taking a person's life. A piece of leaf as a hidden weapon. It wasn't impossible. But just how powerful could a person be? To be able to use a piece of leaf to create such a powerful energy? The speed of the spinning was extremely fast. She couldn't even tell that this was just a piece of leaf. If it wasn't for her body's instinctive reaction towards danger, there was a possibility that she wouldn't be able to avoid it. Who was this person? Why did he make a move on her? Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she shifted her gaze away from the leaf. Sister, sister. Bai Mei's ecstatic voice suddenly rang. This roar could almost shake the entire Hell Palace. Bai Mei struggled to climb up from the ground as her eyes stared in that direction joyfully. Sister, you're here to save me. You're here to save me, right? Sister? These two words made Yiqing Luo's ears buzz for a moment. Her vision trembled. It wasn't that she didn't believe in Dmo Xian. She knew clearly that Dmo Xian and Bai Mei's sister had no ambiguous feelings between a man and a woman. But she heard Bai Mei showing off in the name of sister, once or twice. It would be a lie to say that she didn't feel uncomfortable. At this moment, the sister, who heard Bai Mei's call, had really appeared. Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with an indescribable complicated feeling. She pursed her pink lips slightly and looked in the direction that Bai Mei had gone in. This look made Yiqing Luo slightly stunned. The domineering female boss that he had imagined did not appear in front of him. It was just a thin figure that seemed to have merged with the air, faintly discernible. Yiqing Luo, who had seen Old Man Song reveal his spiritual body, could tell at a glance that that frail figure was a spiritual body. Bai Mei's sister was a spiritual body? Why are you here? Just as Yiqing Luo was filled with doubts. Behind her came the man's low and hoarse voice. There was no emotion in that voice. But Yiqing Luo could tell. The man's voice was much gentler than before. In other words, was that spiritual body really Bai Mei's mysterious elder sister? Mayor has caused you trouble. The voice of the spiritual body was very gentle. It was the kind of gentleness that was unique to Jiangnan women. It was very natural and definitely not intentional. Sister, how could you help them speak ill of me? Look at me now. That slut, not only did he snatch the overlord away from you, he even beat me up to this state and even wanted to cut my face. You have to help me take revenge. Chapter 3057. Her sister was here not to back her up. Instead, she was speaking up for those who bullied her. How could Bai Mei accept this? The spiritual body's voice was very soft, as gentle as water. She called out Bai Mei's name as her gaze shifted to Bai Mei's face. Yiqing Luo also saw the spiritual body's face clearly. That face was extremely beautiful. Elegant and refined without a speck of dust. A pair of pure and gentle beautiful eyes stared at Bai Mei indifferently, which made Bai Mei unable to say a single word. The spiritual body's lips curled as she spoke gently. The relationship between my sister and the overlord has never been what you think. The overlord has never belonged to me. She paused for a moment as her gaze became increasingly gentle, like a warm spring breeze blowing against her. Even though the spiritual body's vision wasn't looking at Yiqing Luo could feel the warm breeze blowing against her. Following that, she heard the spiritual body's gentle voice ringing, "Moreover, you've done something wrong, so being injured is a lesson for you. If you know pain, then think clearly where you've done wrong, then you will naturally not get injured again." "Sister." Bai Mei pursed her lips tightly, totally disagreeing with her own sister's words, but she couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. When Yiqing Luo saw this, she couldn't help but have goosebumps. Bai Mei had an 18 or 19-year-old young lady's face. But in actual fact she was already over 30 years old, and could be considered as an auntie. She even put on a delicate look, acting coquettishly towards her own sister. Didn't Bai Mei feel embarrassed? Or, she had a young lady's face. Did she really treat herself as a young lady? To think that Bai Mei's sister could still maintain her gentle face, without any change in her emotions, facing her younger sister who was pretending to be young. If you still don't know where you've done wrong, then the injury on your body isn't considered serious. The spiritual body interrupted Bai Mei's words. I'm still not considered serious. Bai Mei's eyes turned red from anger as resentment and anger spread in her pupils. That scoundrel wanted to ruin my face, wanted to cut my face, and even caused me to be seriously injured. Do you think that it will only be serious if I die? Bai Mei clenched her fists as tears welled up in her eyes. I know that for the sake of the Overlord, you can abandon me, your little sister. I've been alone for so many years and I've endured it. It doesn't matter if I have you as my sister or not. Mei, The spirit body's gentle voice revealed a hint of choking. Her voice trembled as she stared at Bai Mei, her eyes filled with grief and helplessness. Bai Mei closed her eyes as if she was suppressing the emotions in her heart. Then she suddenly opened her eyes, turned around, and walked in the opposite direction of the spiritual body. You abandoned me for the Overlord. Now, to please the Overlord, you don't even care about your sister's life. So, it's my turn to abandon you? It's my turn to abandon you. Bai Mei's turn was swift and decisive. Yiqing Luo stood at the angle of the carriage. Coincidentally, he saw the expression on Bai Mei's face when she turned around. Obviously, Bai Mei's words were sonorous and forceful, with righteous words. Her tone was choked with sobs as if she couldn't bear to part with it. But on Bai Mei's face, there wasn't a single bit of reduced heartache expression. On the contrary, her eyes were slightly raised, filled with ridicule and sarcasm. Chapter 3058. Obviously, Bai Mei's sudden crying scene was deliberately poking at her sister's most guilty spot. It was to evoke his sister's guilt. Thus he could avenge her. Yiqing Luo scoffed. This Bai Mei had even schemed against her own sister. He wondered just how shameless she was. That was why she was able to use her sister's name to show off in front of Dmo Xian. However, Yiqing Luo saw through Bai Mei's little scheme. However, after hearing Bai Mei's words, Bai Mei's elder sister, the spiritual body, revealed a look of grief that could not be dispelled. She pursed her pale lips and looked at Bai Mei's back as she left. Her elegant and refined face was shrouded in melancholy. His body also seemed to be fusing with the air, becoming increasingly transparent. Mei, that's not what Big Sister meant. The spirit body hurriedly said, full of worry. Big Sister knows it's Big Sister who shouldn't, before he could finish his words. But she was interrupted by a deep voice, Baisu. That voice forcefully stopped the spirit body from speaking. The spiritual body speedily turned around and its eyes, which were stained with tears, looked at Dmo Xian. What are you doing here? Dmo Xian frowned. The spiritual body, which was Baisu, had a slight change in her gentle expression. Very soon, she became gentle again and looked at Dmo Xian with her watery eyes. Dmo Xian, I'm just worried about my sister. She's not a bad person by nature. Dmo Xian's frown deepened as his lips twitched. Yiqing Luo, looking at this spiritual body called Baisu talking to Dmo Xian so gently, why did she have a very strange feeling? This feeling was completely different from the previous uncomfortable feeling. For some reason he felt that Baisu was not as gentle as she looked. Dmo Xian's obstruction. All the plans of Bai Mei, who had been snickering in her heart and waiting for Baisu to coax her, were disrupted. In the direction that Bai Mei was heading. It was the direction of the Underworld Palace's group. If she continued to walk forward, she would be delivering herself into the hands of the people from the Underworld Palace. If she retreated, Didn't his performance in front of Baisu go to waste? Bai Mei's face was ferocious. She gritted her teeth and cursed Baisu in her heart. How dare you say that I'm not an admirer of His Majesty? Once His Majesty has spoken, even my sister has given up trying to persuade her. It was at this moment. The people from the underworld palace suddenly exchanged glances with one another. Then they leaped at the same time. Bai Mei was originally injured because of Yiqing Luo. Suddenly he was surrounded by a group of stinky old men. His hands, which hadn't been washed for a long time, were clasping her limbs. Ah! Bai Mei let out a shriek. Was a scream. It immediately attracted the attention of Dmo Xian and Baisu. Baisu stared at Bai Mei for a long while. Bai Mei screamed and wailed, "Sister! Sister, save me!" Only then did Baisu's gentle and beautiful eyes move slowly. Her spirit body quickly floated forward and said worriedly, Don't be afraid. I'm here." The surrounding Yiqing Luo expressed that she really couldn't understand this woman called Baisu. If Baisu was really as worried about Bai Mei as she appeared to be, she could totally take action. Chapter 30:59. As long as Baisu made a move, those lunatics from Hell Palace would not be able to use Bai Mei to threaten her. But Baisu did not make a move. She was like a delicate white lotus, her eyes and mouth full of worry, expressing her concern for Bai Mei. Baisu's attitude. This made the two men from Hell Palace who were restraining Bai Mei to reveal a joyful expression. It looked like they had caught the right person. With this thought in mind, the men from Hell Palace tightened their grip on Bai Mei and even drew out a dagger and pressed it against Bai Mei's neck. All of you leave Hell Palace, otherwise I will kill this woman." The men from Hell Palace had already grasped onto the last straw, staking everything on this one throw. Originally they wanted to use a sneak attack to restrain Dmo Xian. Unexpectedly, Dmo Xian's power had already reached an unfathomable level. They would never be Dmo Xian's opponent. Moreover, there was another spiritual lady with unfathomable power. How were they going to protect Hell Palace? Although, the woman in their hands seemed to have some conflict with the Overlord's woman. But she was the younger sister of another spiritual lady. If they could make use of this woman in their hands to incite the spiritual lady and the Overlord to kill each other, they would be able to reap the benefits of the third party. With this thought in mind, the expressions on the men from Hell Palace became more and more sinister. "Quick! Leave Hell Palace, bring your men and leave immediately." Baisu's eyes were filled with tears, her little hands clenched tightly as she trembled. You can't hurt my sister. Sister, save me. I don't want to die. Bai Mei felt the blade on her neck almost cutting through her skin as she cried out for help in fright. Baisu was also very anxious. Her eyes were red as her spiritual body floated around in the air with an anxious look. "Sister will save you, don't be afraid, I only have you as my sister, I will never let you die." Her words made the eyes of the men from Hell Palace suddenly lit up. They were even more certain that this woman in their hands was enough to threaten the Overlord and that spiritual lady. "It's not impossible for us to let this young lady go." Hell Palace's men shot a glance at the gloomy-looking Dmo Xian. As long as you stop the Overlord, I'll let her go." Baisu's beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. She turned her head and looked at Dmo Xian behind her as her lips trembled. "Overlord." Yiqing Luo seemed to see Dmo Xian's lips twitching even more violently. Baisu covered her face with her hands and continued to speak in a voice as gentle as water, with a hint of eagerness and helplessness. "Dizun. Can you?" "No." Dmo Xian interrupted Baisu's words without any hesitation, as his face was expressionless. Chapter 30:60. Baisu's slender body froze. She blinked her eyes and tears welled up in her eyes, but they did not fall. She choked with sobs. "How can I bear to see you die? You are my only sister. I will save you. I will not let you die." Bai Mei felt a stabbing pain in her neck, and the feeling of blood flowing out made her face feel itchy and painful. This tormented Bai Mei so much that she wanted to reach out and grab it. But she had just raised her hands. The people from the Hell Palace pressed her down hard. She was so itchy that her whole body was writhing. She was in so much pain that she drew in a cold breath. Bai Mei even felt that her face was about to break away from her face. This realization made Bai Mei widen her eyes. Her facial features twisted as she gnashed her teeth and cursed Baisu. She had given up everything in exchange for this face. She must not lose this face. This face belonged to her. Even if she had to die, it could only belong to her. Bai Mei's crazy and ferocious actions made the people from the Hell Palace unable to hold her down. The people from the Hell Palace had already suffered today's encounter. In a short while, the 3 leaders of the Hell Palace had been tortured into a ball of flesh and blood. And they had been arrogantly bullied by Dmo Xian in their territory. They had been suppressing their anger for a long time. Now Bai Mei was still trying to break away from their control. The people from the Hell Palace had a vicious look in their eyes. They directly waved the dagger in their hands and pinned Bai Mei's hands on the rock wall. Bai Mei screamed. The dagger pierced through her wrists and went straight into the rock wall. The sharp pain almost made her faint. The loss of blood made the skin on her face itch and hurt. She felt like her face was being torn apart, and the skin that she wanted to get rid of surged even more. Mei, Baisu exclaimed. Her gentle voice was trembling. The Dmo Xian wants to settle the score with you. What's the use of venting your anger on my sister? Or do you think that by torturing my sister, you are helping the Dmo Xian's woman solve unnecessary trouble? Are you trying to plead with the Dmo Xian's woman? No, let me tell you, this is absolutely impossible. The people from the Hell Palace? This idea seemed to be not bad. The Dmo Xian's woman was not on good terms with this woman. If they killed this woman for Di Zun's woman, they could use this opportunity to plead with Di Zun's woman. In the carriage, Yiqing Luo, who was receiving all the naked gazes. Why did she get dragged into this for no reason again? Did Baisu really want to save Bai Mei? Why did she feel that Baisu was purposely reminding the people from the Hell Palace? Yiqing Luo expressed. He had originally thought that this woman might be a love rival. Then he added the White Lotus attribute. She would have to fight for at least 300 rounds. But why? She felt that this woman, who was a rival in love, was so likable. Madam, the reason why the Underworld Palace injured Madam is because we didn't know that those bastards from the Palace of Darkness had schemed against us. Now, Lord Hell has been crippled and Leng Yan has also become a cripple. Madam, please be magnanimous and spare Hell Palace this time. Hell Palace is willing to owe Madam a favor. Hell Palace's people were indeed very tactful as they immediately started to plead for leniency towards Yiqing Luo. Chapter 3061. Yiqing Luo. They had obviously come to settle the score with the Underworld Palace and take revenge. Why did it feel like the direction was getting more and more crooked? Her eyes twitched as she looked at Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's expression was also very ugly, as his shimmering peach blossom eyes were surging with undercurrents. He looked at Baisu with his dark and deep eyes and frowned slightly, as if he was very dissatisfied with Baisu. Very quickly he detected Yiqing Luo's line of sight. He shifted his gaze towards the carriage. Through the veil their eyes met. Yiqing Luo's peripheral vision glanced at the people from Hell Palace as she mouthed, "What do you think we should do?" Her lips had just stopped moving. The veil fluttered and a gentle current of air blew over. It was as if a man's large palm was caressing her face. Beside her ears, the man's deep and husky voice was mixed. "Everything is up to you." His voice fell. The gentle airflow dissipated in the air. However, the gentle touch on her cheek as well as the elegant sandalwood scent still lingered on her face and nose. Dmo Xian brought her to the Underworld Palace, prepared to let her settle the debt properly. It was considered as killing the chicken to warn the monkey, informing everyone that he, Dmo Xian, had a woman whom he regarded as a treasure. But Dmo Xian probably did not expect it. Bai Mei, who was supposed to have died on the battlefield of the Miao tribe, was still alive. She had even followed them to the Underworld Palace and caused so much trouble. Messed up all their plans. It wasn't just the historian of balance who was rushing over. Even the mysterious elder sister that Bai Mei had mentioned appeared in the form of a spirit. At present, Yiqing Luo couldn't feel whether Baisu was a friend or foe to her. But what Yiqing Luo could confirm was, the relationship between Baisu and Dmo Xian was extraordinary. However, she did not understand Baisu's attitude towards Bai Mei. Baisu really loved Bai Mei. Naturally, she would not really take Bai Mei's life. Although she didn't really like Baisu. But he didn't hate it. She would never lay her hands on Bai Mei just because of the relationship between Baisu and Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian said that everything was up to her. In other words, he was telling her that it didn't matter if she wanted the people of the Underworld Palace to kill Bai Mei or if she wanted to take revenge on the people of the Underworld Palace. He would clean up the mess. There was no need to care about anyone else's thoughts and opinions. Having said that, However, she really could not bring herself to cause conflict between Dmo Xian and Bai Su because of Bai Mei. He pondered for a while. Yiqing Luo made a decision in her heart. She raised her head and looked at the people from the underworld palace. The moment she opened her mouth, she forcefully closed it again. Because she did not need to worry about whether she should save Bai Mei's life from the hands of the people from the underworld palace. Just as she was deep in thought, the people from the underworld palace took her silence as a tacit agreement. Without any hesitation, he nailed Bai Mei to the wall. Endless fresh blood slid down the rock wall. Yiqing Luo, was there a need to be so savage? The few people from Hell Palace were still trying to claim credit, as they begged for Yiqing Luo's forgiveness. Yiqing Luo turned her head stiffly as she looked at Bai Su expressionlessly. I'm sorry, no matter if you believe it or not, I didn't want them to kill Bai Mei. I don't blame you. Bai Su's spiritual body suddenly floated back to Dmo Xian's side. These 4 words, when Yiqing Luo heard it, why did she feel that something was amiss? Wait a minute. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.